and say welcome again to tonight's webinar. I'm just going to introduce Cynthia for those of you who don't know her or haven't met her. She's the co-founder of the Awaken Life Project with her husband, Peter, which is based here in Portugal. Lives at Quinta da Miserella, which is the hub of the Awaken Life Project. But the project has members all over the world, all over Portugal. And really the project is dedicated to helping people awaken to the reality that they are already always free. Cynthia runs public courses and retreats throughout the year in Portugal and abroad. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Cynthia.
Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see so many people I've seen before, but also a lot of new people. So before I get started in speaking about commitment, why don't we just meditate for a few minutes? So if everybody could sit up very tall and put your feet on the floor, close your eyes, and just take a very, very deep breath in, allowing the air to go all the way down into the belly. And as you exhale, release any tension you might feel in the body. Bring yourself to the present moment. And again, breathing in. And exhale, releasing the tension. And just do this a couple more times at your own pace. But bring your attention to the inhalation and the exhalation.
Mm.
And then when you're ready, just breathe naturally. And just relax. If the mind is busy, it doesn't matter. If you find yourself agitated, just very gently bring your attention back to the body breathing. And just take a moment to actually enjoy the breathing process as it's occurring. We're usually so busy, running here, running there, thinking, and thinking, that we don't ever take the time to appreciate that the body is being breathed. So gently shift your attention to the sensation of the air coming into the body and the sensation as it exits. And allow yourself to be curious about this breathing process. How is it happening? Am I actually doing anything? Or is breathing just occurring? So as you recognize that the breathing is just occurring, appreciate it, feel it. And you might be distracted, putting your attention on thought, but that's okay. Just make the effort to shift your attention back to the body breathing. And let go. Enjoy and appreciate. And as you relax your attention on the body breathing, notice that you are aware of where you're putting your attention. You're aware if your attention is relaxing onto the breath. And if you wander and your attention goes into the mind, notice that you're aware of that also. You may feel sensations in the body. You can hear my voice. And relax into the fact that you are aware of my voice, the body breathing, and where your attention is. So if the mind is busy or the mind is quiet, if the body is relaxed or tense, realize that you are prior to any of those sensations. And you can recognize that by simply being aware that you are aware of all those sensations that are arising right now. So it doesn't matter what the content of your awareness is. It's completely irrelevant. What's important is that you recognize that you are aware of the busy mind. You are aware of the quiet mind. You are aware of the stillness or the contraction or the tension. It doesn't really matter what your experience is right now. The goal is not to have a quiet mind. Or to create some kind of experience. The most important thing is to rest as awareness itself, as yourself. So all the craziness can be going on, but you can just relax and let this whole show play in front of you. You don't need to get involved with the craziness while you're meditating. Meditation is the moment where you don't have to do anything. You don't need to respond to anything. It's a beautiful gift to stop engaging. And it's in those moments you can become more grounded in the truth that you are that which is aware. You are not the busy mind. You are not the contracted body. You are not the quiet mind or the relaxed body. You are that which is aware. You are that which is prior to, before everything that's arising within your awareness. So enjoy the freedom that you always already are. Even if the mind is busy, but the body is contracted. It's a very, very soft realization. So as we close out the meditation, realize that when you open your eyes, that you are still that which is aware of the content that's arising within you It is never not the case. The content will change, but you, that which is always already free from the content, is always present and never changes. And for that, we can be eternally grateful. So when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Okay. It's very nice to see so many of you tonight. It's very nice to see some new faces. It's always nice to see the old faces, but the new faces are also very nice. So people must have been kind of interested in the topic of the webinar tonight. Why am I afraid of commitment? I can't remember if the topic was why am I afraid of commitment or why are you afraid of commitment? Doesn't really matter though. It all comes down to the same thing. So I want to say a little bit about commitment and then we're going to open it up for questions because I think it's important that everyone starts to get real with this question for themselves. Because it's something that in our society today, I think everybody knows most people are afraid of commitment. But so often, we're okay with it. We struggle with it, but in the end, we're just kind of okay with it. So the most important thing is when we look at this fear of commitment, that we understand who is the I that's actually afraid. So we're going to put all this in a spiritual context because it's really the only context that makes any sense from my point of view. So the spiritual context is basically that prior to anything, just like in the meditation, You are always already free. And then thought arises. And somewhere we decide to personalize this thought. And out of habit, we create the illusion of a separate self in the moment that we personalize thought or feeling. But usually it's thought. So a thought arises and we personalize it. We make a thought mean something about me. It creates a story called me. It creates a problem called me that I have to get over so I can be me. But we're in a loop of the illusion of the separate self. And that loop that we think is me is not me. We are that which is aware. Now, the only way that the illusion of the separate self can maintain itself is for you to continue to personalize thought and feeling as it's arising in your experience. So we're all conditioned human beings. We're all conditioned to believe something about ourselves. We have ideas of how we should look, how we should think, how we should act. We have ideas of how everybody else should look, how everybody else should think, and how everybody else should act. So we're living in a bubble of our own creation, really. So when we recognize that we're all conditioned human beings and we're having a conditioned thought, so a thought, for example, that says, I'm not good enough, or a thought that says, I'm stupid, these are just random things. I'm sure everybody can relate to those and probably many more. But that thought arises in our awareness. It means absolutely nothing. It's just a thought. But if we personalize that thought and we create a story around it called me, then all of a sudden we are living in this illusion that we are that story. So in time and space, which is everything in this relative world, we are living under the illusion that we're isolated, separate, and alone. That's what our definition of ego actually is. So we all have our particular stories that we've created through our personalization of thought, but fundamentally, we believe that we're alone and we're isolated, which is contrary to the truth that we are actually all one consciousness and we are not alone. We cannot be separate, no matter how separate we actually feel. So the problem with the situation with everybody believing that they're a separate I, an ego I, that has all sorts of ideas to protect and to prove, all sorts of self-images to protect and to prove. And we're constantly protecting and proving ourselves to each other and to ourselves. The problem with that is that there's a lack of trust in the society that we live in now. So it's very, very difficult to trust someone who thinks they're isolated and alone and they have something to prove and something to always protect. Because usually if we have something to prove and something to protect, we're also constantly trying to manipulate our experience or manipulate other people to think that we are not the self-image that we actually believe ourselves to be. So if we're living in a state of constant proving and protecting between each other, in a constant state of trying to manipulate our experience, you see there's nothing trustworthy there. So if you look at commitment, usually what we're trying to do is we're desperate because we want to commit to someone or to something. But our ongoing experience really is one of mistrust. So then there's fear. How can I commit to something when everything seems to be untrustworthy? And if we're really getting real about it, not only is everything untrustworthy, if you point the finger at yourself and you look at the choices that you're making and the identification with the separate I that you have, you also might find that you're untrustworthy. So then if you think about that, it would make sense that you would be afraid to commit to anything, right? So we're just going to dissect the fear here. But all of that story that I just told you is basically from the belief that you are a separate self, that you're isolated, separate, and alone from everybody. Okay, so that whole story is built on an illusion, and you have to find this out for yourself. But if you've had any recognition at any time, whether it be in meditation or in nature, where all of a sudden the doors of perception open and all of your problems you think you have and everything that you're upset about, all of a sudden just disappears and you become one with everything around you. And that can happen in different ways. You might have different experiences of that one. But if you've had that experience, whether it's been a big mind-blowing experience or just a small intuition, you see there's something in you that actually knows the truth, that you are not the self, the separate self that's isolated and alone. You are not that which you believe yourself to be. So when we look at commitment, you see what we're actually not afraid to commit to. This is where it gets kind of interesting. We're very committed to maintaining the separate self. We're not really that afraid to commit to that. What we're afraid of is to commit to letting go of the separate self. That's where we start freaking out. Because if you think about it, what would it be like for you to fully give yourself in a relationship? Most people don't do that. And most people have a lot of ideas of what that looks like. And usually the excuse is the other person's not trustworthy. Okay, but again, you're operating out of this loop of fear that's coming from the belief that you're isolated, separate, and alone. So you're in this loop of ego and you're afraid to give completely. Because if you give completely, that means you have to give up the illusion of the separate self. So commitment and surrender are synonymous from a spiritual perspective. So when we talk about commitment, we want to be really, really clear about from where are we looking at either the fear of commitment or actually committing. So now if you think about it, if you commit to something completely, you see there is no victim position there. You liberate yourself in that surrender, in that commitment. Okay? Now, it doesn't mean necessarily that it depends on what you're committing to. Let's put it this way. So I was just reading this autobiography of Tina Turner. I don't know if people know who she is. She's been a rock star for years. And she has a very interesting background because she was with somebody named Ike Turner, who was quite an abusive character. And she's had a very rough life and she had to break through, but all she wanted to do was be a singer. And she was fully committed to doing that. So no matter what happened in her life, she never backed away from that. And she became a world famous singer for over 50 years. And that's because she fully gave herself to that. Now that doesn't mean she's an enlightened human being from a spiritual perspective, but when you give yourself fully to something, you're creating a situation where you're no longer victimized in that area of your life. Okay? So just imagine what it would be like for you to be fully engaged with life. Fully engaged. It's freedom. So when Tina Turner's singing, she's completely free because she's committed. I was in a stretch class in India at a clinic a year or so ago. And anytime I would stretch, I'd always be holding back because everything hurt. And I was like, oh God, I just can't let go. And this hurts. And then I'd let go some and it was good. But there was a moment in a specific class where all of a sudden I didn't care what I felt like. And I wasn't holding back, trying to protect myself, protect my body from any pain. And I just let go. And my body was fully engaged. And I got to tell you, it was ecstatic. It was absolutely ecstatic. And it really taught me something. It's like, wow, fully engaged means no holding back. No holding back is freedom. So committing means no holding back. It's another way to say I'm committed means I'm not going to hold back. So when you don't hold back, that means you're not imposing any kind of limitation on yourself. You're not imposing any limitation on other people. You're not imposing fear. You're not holding back out of any ideas. You are fully engaged. Now, what we'll do a lot of the time is we think if I'm fully engaged, I'm always going to feel good. Not necessarily, but you will always be free. And freedom is not a feeling. Freedom means you're not holding on to anything. No attachment to fear. Doesn't matter if fear arises in your awareness, you are that which is aware. You are not the fear. So we're not talking about denying anything that's arising in your awareness. But what you're not doing is you're not personalizing it. You're not denying it. And you're not holding back from it. So if you're fully committed to life, that means you're fully committed to feeling. You're fully committed to acting. You're fully committed to not acting when that's appropriate. You're fully committed to being nobody instead of being the one who has a problem, the one who is afraid, the one who can't do this, the one who can't do that. You see, all of it goes. All of it. When you're fully committed, there's no space for ego in that moment. So when you think about the question, why am I afraid to commit? It's actually a much bigger question. It's not like a psychological therapeutic thing that we can go through. I mean, I'm sure if we all just opened up the microphones, we could have all sorts of stories of why we can't trust and why we can't commit to this and why we can't commit to that. We might even have stories where we actually did fully commit. You know, a diet is actually one of the ones that's kind of the classic case. Somebody will fully commit to a healthy lifestyle of eating and exercising, and they feel fantastic. And then what happens? They stop eating healthy and they stop exercising. Why? They felt fantastic. Why would they quit? It's because there's no longer any victim position available to you when you give yourself fully. There's no separate self in there that has any hold on you. So I hope this is making sense to you. So we're all in a process. So it doesn't mean that full commitment is going to happen just like this, you know, it could do. But we can be fully committed to become awakened human beings, and we can become fully committed to doing whatever it takes to back that up with action. We can be fully committed to that. And we can be fully committed that when we unconsciously make mistakes, we can be fully committed to learn from those mistakes. We can be fully committed to being humble in the fact that we're attached to our egoic habits more than we thought we were. So when we consciously choose to go with an egoic habit, we can be fully committed to be humble in the face of it and to learn so that we don't continue to cause ourselves suffering and cause other people suffering. We can be fully committed to that. There's not a single person on this call that can't do that. So if we're fully committed to being free, liberated human beings, which is who we always already are, don't forget that. So it's not like you have to get over all your stuff. You know, all your stuff is still going to be there, just like in the meditation. It might be all floating around in there, but you can be fully committed to where you put your attention. And it's not going to be easy, because what we're normally fully committed in, or to, we're very committed to maintaining our separate identity. We're very committed to being victims, and we're very committed to just, having lots of excuses of why we can't be fully committed to freedom. Okay, so we're not stuck. We just have to acknowledge that being fully committed is not really the problem. The problem is, what are we fully committed to? And being humble that shifting that attention to freedom, which is here and now always, is going to take some effort. And we can be committed to that effort. And if your brains just get blown and you have the white light experience and you don't have to make any effort at all, then you can be fully committed to that. It doesn't really matter, but it just matters, what are you going to do? Are you fully committed to maintaining your separate sense of self? Or are you fully committed to the process to awaken from that illusion? You see, so we're all in the same boat, because we're all conditioned human beings. And we all have the capacity to put our attention wherever we want it. And we all have the capacity to decide, what am I going to commit my life to? And then we all have the courage to be able to face whatever we need to face in order to make that real, and not just make it some kind of declaration that makes us feel good. So the reason why you're afraid is because that's part of the awakening process. But that doesn't mean, just because you're afraid of commitment, it doesn't mean that that's the end of the story. And it doesn't mean that you have a problem. It just means that you have to see all of this in a context of prior freedom, and a context where you're not a victim. And the truth is that you are always already free. And if you look and you ask yourself, what is a victim? A victim is somebody that has no choice. And everybody has a choice on how they relate to everything. So you are always already free, and you've never been a victim. You might have had things happen to you, but how you relate to whatever's happened to you in the past is available to you right now to choose to not make it into a problem, not deny it, but to be able to face it. And that's part of the commitment to being a free human being. That's part of what it means. But I tell you, when you're resting in that which is aware, and I hope you all got a taste of it in the meditation, you see, you can always recognize that I am that which is aware, and what used to pull your attention will change. And you won't be so interested in your own drama. You won't be so interested in solving all your problems. You'll be interested in being free, and you'll do what you have to do in order to transcend all of the habits that you have. But see, you won't be victimized by the process itself, because in every moment you choose freedom, and every moment you choose to commit to that freedom, you're free. It's as simple as that. Now, you may choose to do something else in the next moment, and you may suffer, but it's always your choice. But even if you choose in the next moment to suffer, you see, you always have the next moment to choose something different. So nobody's stuck. Nobody's a victim. So the good news is freedom is in your own hands. It's already your natural state. So, the question, are you going to be afraid of that? And I tell you, your ego is freaked out about that idea. It's not interested in you seeing through the illusion of the separate self. But once you know it's not true, you see, then you can be committed to living your deepest understanding and continuing to learn on all the ways that you might be attached. But again, every time you choose to back that commitment up with action, you see you're free in that moment. You recognize the inherent liberation of your own existence. And that's true for all of us. So this isn't, you know, this isn't just some kind of feel-good type of thing. Commitment is really something that's synonymous with surrender. And what are we surrendering? We're surrendering the illusion of the separate I. And we're giving all of our attention to that which is prior to that illusion. So I think I've said quite a lot, and I want to leave some time for some questions. But let's just take a few moments just to meditate and let, you know, kind of let all this sink in a little bit. So if everybody can just sit quietly, however you're comfortable, and just take a moment and closing your eyes. And just let everything cook. And when you're ready, you can just open your eyes. Okay, I hope that made sense to everyone. It's kind of a different way to look at the fear of commitment. So let's open it up for any comments or questions about anything, and really make it real for yourself. You know, and nobody has to try to hide the fact that you might be afraid of commitment. You might have practical questions around it. But pretty much everything I said is probably going to answer many of your questions. Can you see the screens, Laura? Mm-hmm. Okay. So Laura's scanning the screens just to see if anybody's got their hand up. Is that Albert? Albert, do you have your hand up? No. Oh,
No, I don't, but I do have a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah, and then we'll take Manon after, okay? Yeah, Albert, hi, nice to see you.
Same here. Thank you, Cynthia. Yes, I did understand what you said. Here's my personal dilemma. think I fear making commitments around what I'm devoted to. My fear is that I make a commitment based on half-heartedness, you know, not fully there.
Mhm.
And then I have to, at the time it comes to implementing, I don't want to do it. So I think personally, I have to get in touch with what it is I'm really devoted to.
Mhm.
Understand that when I make these half-hearted commitments, that I'm really trying to please somebody other than myself. Does that make sense to you?
Well, I think it's true. You need to really decide what you're committed to. Because if you're actually committed to liberating yourself from any kind of self-image that you might have in pleasing other people, if you're interested in liberating yourself from that, you see, you won't make half-hearted commitments for the wrong reasons. So really the half-hearted commitment really says that you actually you're more committed to maintaining a certain persona than you are in actually following through with the commitment. And it also says, if this is a habit, it also creates an idea in yourself that it's okay to make half-hearted commitments. There's somewhere that you're okay with it.
Yeah, that's what I got from your discussion. So I saw that clearly. That's what was coming up for me, that I was okay with to satisfy that separate sense of self.
Right. So you're breaking up just a little bit, Albert, but I think I got what you're saying. Yeah. See, it always comes back to you know, do you want to be a liberated human being? And then are you going to back that up with action? Because these are kind of the type of things where the rubber hits the road, because everybody can say they're interested in being a free human being. And, you know, there's some authentic truth to that. But there might be certain aspects of one's life that it's very easy to make commitments and to follow through because those are the commitments you're interested in. And then there might be other ones that kind of challenge you more, or challenge you, as you have said, trying to be the one who's being a nice guy or trying to please whoever it is you're making the commitment to. But it really comes down to your intention to be, your commitment to being a free human being, and then making it real in whatever, you know, whatever opportunities you have, but especially the ones that you know that you have a tendency to be half-hearted about.
Right.
Because if you're aware of this habit, Albert, then, you know, somewhere you're consciously continuing to do it. It's no longer unconscious to you. So you want to be careful with those kind of things, because when we're unconscious about something, then, you know, we're not responsible. But when we're conscious of something, we actually are responsible for it. So if we're aware of something that's egoic and we do it anyway, you see, then you're kind of entering into the territory of you're playing a bit of a game. You know, still trying to maintain the idea that I'm a serious spiritual aspirant, but not really, but I still want to maintain that. And that's not to say across the board. I'm just saying in these particular moments.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Manon, you were going to say something?
Yeah. Comment, actually. It's not a question, but what came very clearly after listening to you is the fear I might have of commitment is actually a fear of an idea, is not real.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, in that recognition, I can sense in my body, my whole being totally relaxed about like, wow, actually, and when you said, actually, we are committed, I'm committed to all the habits I have, actually, and I do it again and again and again, which is like, wow, I know how to commit, actually. Very good. You know,
Right.
like, oh, wow, I know how to do that. And so it's like there's a less seriousness about believing in that fear
Right.
of fear of committing actually is totally nonsense, because we do commit all the
Right.
time.
Right.
So
It's kind of the same with discipline. A lot of people will say, I'm not disciplined, but they're very disciplined in doing things that aren't good for them. But they're not that disciplined. But discipline is not the problem. It's just, what are they disciplined to do?
yeah.
So it's the
And
same thing.
what comes also is that knowing that, okay, I know how to commit. Now I know also what I want. And if I really commit or surrender, actually I don't know how. And there's a little bit of mystery in that. And it's appealing also.
Right, and there's more than a little mystery in that. There's complete mystery in that, because if you really commit, that means you don't actually know what you're going, how you're going to be in any given moment. Not in a reckless kind of way where, a crazy person might just act in any way they want. But when you actually surrender the separate I, and you surrender the story that goes along with the separate I, then you're present with whatever is happening. And in presence comes spontaneous response. And that spontaneous response is the mystery that's actually coming through the individual in that moment, where you're actually hearing yourself speak in the same way that at the same time as the person who's actually listening. Because everything is just happening. There's no longer this middleman in the middle, kind of gauging everything to see, how am I going to do? Am I this? Am I that? You're just willing to be available and willing to respond in any given moment. And then sometimes that may mean directness. Sometimes it may mean to be very still and very quiet. But you don't care what it means. You're just available to this mystery as yourself in every moment. And it looks different it looks different. So we have so many ideas of what all of this is supposed to look like. And usually the ideas we have is that it's all going to be very calm. We don't have the stupid ideas where we think, oh, angels are going to come out of the sky and all this kind of stuff. We don't think we consciously have those ideas, but somewhere we do have a pretty good idea of what heaven looks like. And that's what it's going to look like when, if I fully commit to being available as a vehicle of consciousness or God. We have pretty good ideas that it's supposed to feel a certain way and it's going to look a certain way. And I mean, as far as I've gone with this, what I get really excited about is to recognize it doesn't look like anything in particular. And that's the beauty of it, because there's this constant kind of contentment underlying everything. So that's the same, but the expression of that contentment could be like energized in 1 minute and not in the next. Or it could be just like, wow, I didn't do the same, there's an egoic habit that arises and I just didn't go with it. Oh, that's really cool. You see, that's a different expression of that contentment. So you're exactly right. When you commit, commitment is not something we do necessarily. It is and it isn't. That's why I was tying it with surrender. So when you give yourself in those moments, if everybody, who's on the webinar, if you just think of those moments where you just give up your contraction or trying to figure something out, it's like those moments where you're completely confused and you've wrapped yourself up in knots in 16 different ways and you just finally give up. And then out of left field, something comes to you. You see, it's in those moments that you didn't do anything other than just give up your contraction. But when you commit to being a free human being, see, the willingness to give up the contraction is the commitment. And it's the surrender. So that's the beauty. It's very beautiful, this whole process of surrender and commitment. It's not a drag. You know, it can be tough sometimes because when it's hard, it's only because you're attached to being less than you are. That Nigel with a hand up? I think you're frozen though. Is he frozen to you?
He's on mute.
Oops. Who's there?
Can you hear me?
Okay, Emma, do you have your hand up?
Nigel's on
Okay. We're trying to get Nigel or Emma, but I'm not sure if we're frozen or not.
Emma's frozen.
I can hear Emma.
Okay, Emma just started laughing. She got unfrozen. I don't know. Nigel, are you still frozen?
I could
Oh,
hear
there you are.
Okay, Emma, do you want to go first or?
I'm not sure if my microphone works.
Okay, I'm really not sure where I'm coming from, but here's the thing. As you're talking, there were two things that struck me. One was victim, and the other was interconnectedness.
Mm-hmm.
I think the hard thing here is if you feel like you're a victim, then you can't be interconnected. So I think first of all, you need to accept that you are a victim, and then to move on from that, to get away from being a victim. And then you need to be a risk taker, I think, in order to join the interconnectedness of us all. Because I think
Yeah.
we are all interconnected. I think that the further back you go, the more you realize that people have been interconnected for years. And as the more modern we've got, the more we've lost that connectedness.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is true, but I'd like to just challenge it a little bit because the interconnectedness is always already the truth. And we've turned away from it. So it's true what you're saying. We feel like we've lost that connection, but the actual underlying truth is that it's still the case. So
I completely agree with you. And I think modern society has taken us away from the interconnectedness.
Well, you see, that's where you're bringing in the victim because you're sounding like modern society. And in one way you could say it that way, but I just want to change it a little bit because how we speak is important because modern society can't take us away from anything. We choose to go along with modern society and we choose to go with the craziness of modern society. And then we convince ourselves that that modern society is doing something to us. But
okay. Yeah.
So that's why there's no victim. So
I hear what you're saying, and I don't think we choose. I think we're indoctrinated. Where we are now, we're indoctrinated.
Mm-hmm.
I'm agreeing with you completely, but it's just where we are mentally, interconnectedly. I think we kind of resist that the feeling that we can be that we are interconnected, and in order to become connected with everyone, and in order to get to let ourselves go, it's almost like a science fiction step into the unknown.
Yeah, I think there's one thing missing out of what you're saying, because what you're saying is true from one perspective. It seems like, we're just so conditioned. How can we possibly know anything that's beyond the conditioning? But if you've had the experience, or if you have an understanding through your own experience, not just because you've heard it or you can intellectually get it, but when the doors, I always say it this way because it's helpful, when the doors of perception open and everything that you thought was real, everything that you thought you saw as who you are and who everything else is, in that moment that you go beyond all of the relative conditioning and you're actually in touch with the absolute truth that's prior to all of this stuff that's happening in the world that has us convinced of all sorts of things. You see, when those doors of perception open and you recognize that which is prior to, or the absolute truth of unity or non-duality, you see, then the human being actually knows, aha, there's something more to this human experience than what I thought before. And until that happens, you are just kind of, you know, people are kind of just stumbling around in the world because it's just so intensely egoic. But we're never stuck, because in any moment we can see through that. And that's really what we're trying to do, is to be able to live a life that is identified more with that which is prior to all of this craziness than identified with the separate I that has been created through the choices we've made from a conditioned response.
Cool, I like that. And just being open to that, yeah. In any moment, I can choose where I want to go.
Exactly. And you know, that's it. And you know, in the meditation, like if you just do it right now, you see, you're putting your attention on what I'm saying right now.
Yeah.
At any moment, you can choose where you put your attention. So when you start to have all the thoughts, all the conditioned thoughts that are telling you you're a victim, for example, and you know you have a choice of where you put your attention, that obliterates the idea of victim right there. Because a victim says, the victim, you know, a definition of victim is I don't have a choice.
Right.
But you can choose where you put your attention.
For sure.
In any given moment. And so all of us have to practice not, you know, hypnotically just letting our attention go to all of the ideas and beliefs that we have that support the illusion of the separate self. And we can only do that. We don't know what we're putting our attention on, but we know where not to put our attention.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, you're right. And the key is, there are some times where you can choose where you want your attention to be. And there are other times where your attention just goes to other places. And you have to be in control of where your attention needs to be.
Yeah, but the thing is that in a certain way, we're always choosing. And it feels like, so I agree with you, because it can feel like the attention is just going all over the place and I have no control over it. But if you slow the tape down, and this is why meditation is so important, because when you meditate, you literally can sit back and watch the mind just going absolutely berserk.
Okay.
But you have space between you and the movement of mind. Until that moment, it just feels like you are the movement of mind. But when you have that space by meditating regularly, you see, then you recognize I can put my attention either on the craziness of what's appearing in my awareness, or I can shift my attention back to that which is aware. But that's where the practice comes in, because it does feel like it's just happening by itself. But it actually isn't.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, if you don't have a regular meditation practice now and you're interested in this, I would definitely, you know, encourage you to do so. Because it'll really help you to have more space. And this is true for everybody, more space between, you know, you and the content of the mind.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the conversation. It's good. Okay, Emma, did you still want to say something?
Yes, it's working. Going back to the previous conversation about this committing to and away from the ego, as you say it, or the separate self. I find it quite difficult to understand when I'm still moving from my ego perspective, or when I'm moving from my committed, like the prior. I'm lost in terms, but before the ego. So when you say that, yeah, it's hard for me to distinguish if I'm then actually, because if I understood correctly, the ego wants things, and if you go beyond wanting things, then how do you ever move anywhere anymore? Because if for it to move, you need a will or some sense of direction. You make a choice, you want to go there, but who decides that you're going there? Is this my prior self, or is this my ego again wanting something? And for me, this is very difficult to find some kind of check point with myself, like, where am I moving from? So I'm very aware of my thoughts and all the judgments and things, but I still cannot really decide, like, do I know now, or am I still going from ego thing?
Well,
if that makes sense.
yeah, that makes sense. But you are, well, one way you can tell is, there's two ways you can tell, actually, probably more than two, but we'll just go with two. One is if you're getting something for yourself, if your motivation for your action is so that you can get something for yourself. And what I mean by that is you can get, like, let's say that you're giving somebody a gift. You're going to make somebody dinner because you know you're going to make them dinner. And your motivation to make the dinner is just to give and to make a beautiful dinner. And then the person comes home and they don't thank you for the dinner right away. And you get a little bit aggravated because you spent time making this beautiful dinner. So there is some attachment. There might be some attachment to being the one who made the beautiful dinner and being the one who wants to get some kind of affirmation coming back to tell you that you're okay. So that would be egoic, because you're not giving for the sake of giving. You're giving for the sake of getting. Yeah. So that's one way you can tell, what am I getting out of this? Sometimes if you're doing something, I don't know if you've ever had the situation where you hold yourself to a certain standard that's difficult for you to do it, and you do it, right? You really do it. And then there's something in you that kind of shakes because, oh my God, I've held myself to something. And there's this feeling of wanting to collapse and be dramatic, or to feel sorry for yourself, or to make sure everybody knows you did something amazing. You see? So you held yourself to something. That's not egoic, but you have to be able to bear the intensity of the ego screaming when it's not getting fed. And if you collapse in that moment so that you get some kind of affirmation, you see, again, it's egoic.
Yeah.
So it's really moment by moment. And I tell you, you've got to learn, more about the habit of ego and how it works. Because once you start to learn about it, you recognize that it's the same in everybody. And it's always about holding oneself separate or being limited. It's a contraction. So a very simple way to look at ego is, it's usually the big no. No, I will not give. No, I have my position and I'm right. No, I will not listen. That's pretty much ego. Mm-hmm. The willingness to listen, the willingness to be available. So it's a position of open like this, opposed to like that. You can kind of start to recognize that in your experience too. Mm-hmm. So look at your motivation of why you're doing something. And if you're trying to look good, it's ego. If you're doing it because you want to do a good job, for the sake of doing a good job, but not for the sake of being the one who's doing a good job. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, I did a webinar last month on what is ego. You might want to watch it. It's on the website.
I do have an idea about it. The thing is more that they seem to ride real close together all the time, and then they easily fluctuate into the other one, and then easily can come back. So it's within one action there can be already so many moments or judgment calls where, like, oh, this is from my own giving state, and also there's at the same time no denying that there's maybe something that wants something. I don't know, that they somehow
well, sometimes there's mixed motivation. I mean, sometimes there's mixed motivation, but you want to be able to look and be honest with yourself and say, wow, this was egoic. And then look at the effect of your actions. So you get in touch emotionally with the effect of the actions on yourself and other people. You see, and if you're willing to do that, then you're going to recognize more and more and quicker what's what and what's not.
Yeah.
Laura, I'm going to need to figure something. So it's just really a moment by moment thing. But if you're really interested, you start to feel it. You know, it's kind of like fingernails on the chalkboard. You just start to hear something in your voice that just sounds a little off, or ugh.
This is what you go.
Yeah. Fingers on the chalkboard and contraction are basically egoic signposts.
Good.
Laura's going to swap. We're swapping computers because I left my drive, my power cord. Okay, hang on just a sec. Okay, we're back. Does that make sense to you, Emma?
Yeah, it does. It does. Can I ask one more question?
Yes. Sorry, I was muted.
No worries. It happens. The other thing I notice is that I within this figuring out what it is that I'm moving from, I tend to, out of safety for everyone's sake and also for my sake, to just withdraw a little bit, just to self-connect and stuff, and because then at least I don't move from the wrong. Here we go again, the wrong.
That's okay.
Good or wrong. Yeah. I don't know if that's sensible, but I feel somehow that I should get it figured out myself first before I enter and am in contact with the people around me, just to make my motives pure. And
Well, I mean, a lot
yeah,
of times there's nothing wrong with, you know, taking care. You know, if you know what your egoic habits are, and you just need to take a breath to make sure, you know, to do the best you can. But it can also be a big excuse to not engage with other people and to take the risk to find out. Because as long as you keep everything in the realm of your own mind, trying to make sure you're doing it all right, you know, that's a very safe place for the ego to hide, because you're the one who's in control the whole time. See, and the surrender I'm talking about isn't really that. But in that surrender, there's authentic care and there's humility. So you can go, okay, I'm feeling very contracted right now, so maybe it's not a good time for me to say something to someone because I don't trust how I'm going to say it. That's okay. But also, you need to get to the point where you can transcend that in that moment and recognize, okay, I know I have a habit and I know that I can go with it, but I recognize that habit, so I'm going to take a risk and just lean in. And the best way that you can do it, a little trick just to help you out, is take your attention off your internal experience, all of this stuff that's going on, and just put your attention on the person you're with. Okay? You cannot keep your attention on your own, like, narcissistic relationship to your thoughts and feelings, or your own authentic wanting to do it right. You can't keep your attention inwardly and put your attention on the person at the same time. But if you put your attention on the person, the chances are you won't act egoically.
Yeah.
So that's another good thing. And if you don't want to put your attention on the person, then you're hiding out.
Yes. No. Yeah. No. Yeah. This I do often. Yeah. Stay in contact, and it definitely. I now remember that that this helps a lot to put my attention with the other person and just to go from there. Be in contact rather than keeping the phone.
Yeah, because really what you're doing is you want to be with the person more than you want to be separate in that moment.
Yeah.
So these are all kind of like little helpful things that one can do. And I think the thing that's interesting is, like, in this moment, this is true for everyone, when you feel yourself separating and you make the effort to just put your attention on the other person. You see, if you have any resistance to doing that, then you can actually see ego active in that moment in you.
Yeah.
You see, because if you don't want to be with them, then what you want to be is you want to be separate, you want to be right, you want to be whatever you want to be. But
Yeah, very
that's,
much.
yes, just watch your own experience, because it's all there for everybody to see if you want to see.
Thank you for the reminder. I'll keep it up.
Thank you for the question.
That was my question. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Okay, we got about 5 more minutes if anybody has something. This is a really big thing, you guys, because it's this fear of commitment that actually continues to just perpetuate a world of mistrust and separation. Because, you know, this is another way to look at it. If you've had in your life moments where you've surrendered, and either to another person or to a situation or to God in a moment of despair, in those moments, was it positive or was it negative? And it can only be positive when you let go of the separate self. You know, a lot of the time on retreats that I've been doing for the last couple years, I have people make offerings. And so everybody brings something from home, and every day they go out on their own into nature and they do whatever they want. They can offer whatever they want, but they have to do it authentically. And it's a very magical thing that happens to people when they do this, because they sit down and they think they have an idea of what they're going to offer from all the ideas that they have of what they should offer, because that'll look spiritual, that'll look socially correct or whatever. And they sit down and the authenticity takes over, and then they do something completely different. And in that moment, they authentically offer whatever it is they're offering. And in that moment, that's the moment of surrender, because they're not holding anything back. And they're not offering ideas, they're offering themselves. They're offering the illusion of the separate I in very, very simple ways. And it's a very powerful thing to have that, to be able to do that every day. You know, of course, in a retreat setting, but it's also something that people can do on their own. If you want to, you know, make a little altar in your house, and you can offer to whoever you want. But really what we're doing in the end, whether you're offering something to God, to another person, to, you know, a teacher that you have or whatever, in the end, if it's real and authentic, it's offering the separate self. And it's the willingness to bow down and be with the truth of unity as yourself. So it's a very powerful thing to do. And it's, you know, it's part of a commitment. You know, if you think about committing to give everything, that's one way you can do it. It's a practice. It takes away all of our Western ideas of, I'm going to do it all on my own. I'm not going to offer anything because I can take care of everything myself. And it's irresponsible if I offer my pain to a tree or whatever. It feels like we're just getting started with this conversation. Does anybody have any last minute comments? Oh, Margarita.
When you put it, it's really quite simple. I think like this and these days, I don't know, because of everything is truth and everything is possible and we respect everybody, there's a certain relativity that tells us to deliver yourself completely, that give us an excuse not to commit yourself in work, at home, or religiously, I don't know, in everything. And when you put it that way, it's a quite transversal decision in life to be committed, to be truly committed to life prior than everything. What you choose to do, you do it completely.
Right.
That takes away the space from I don't know, not relative. What's the word?
Well, it takes away just from the reality, the conditioned reality that we live in.
Yeah.
But what you said at the beginning, I think, is a really good way to end the webinar, is because it's really a commitment to simplicity.
Yeah, that's it.
Right. You see, because when the ego and all of your habits and stuff, it lives in complexity. You know, oh, am I doing this right? Am I not doing it right? I mean, you can wrap yourself all up into knots with an authentic desire to actually not be egoic, but because you're actually unconsciously so afraid to make a mistake, which is ego, then you're wrapping yourself up in knots. And then it's very confusing and very complex, and you don't know when you're doing it right or doing it wrong, and you really got the best intention. But you see, the simplicity is you can just relax, and you can be willing to give and be present in every moment. And it's not our normal, way of being, but it is our natural state. So what we need to get back to is we need to get back to the simplicity, which will lead us to our natural state and away from the complexity of life. And even if we're confused with something, because we are, evolving human beings, even if we're confused, we can be very simple in our relationship to that confusion. So it's really good. Simplicity is it. Okay, so I think we'll finish it at that. I always try to finish on time, but I hope this made a lot of sense to people, and and really go into it yourself and ask yourself, how committed am I to living a fully engaged and surrendered life? And just be honest with yourself. And if there's areas that you're not, and everybody will have areas. So if you don't, you're in denial. So, just look at the areas where you're willing to just kind of play around and look at your area and just go, am I satisfied with that? Am I satisfied with being committed this area, but not committed this area, which means you're divided. And am I satisfied with that? And then you decide, because it's up to you. So Laura's going to come back to her computer. Now we're going to be on the screen together. This is always, when we do this, it's a little bit of a comedy show behind the scenes. You guys probably don't notice, but something always happens. Okay,
so I'm just going to tell you about some things coming up and other ways you can engage with Cynthia. So this Sunday, October the 6th, and I'll send all this to you in an email, so you don't need to worry about writing it down. There's a long meditation called the One Meditation Day, which is organized by Manon, who is on the screen now. And that is an online meditation, which runs from 3 to 8 p.m. Lisbon, London time.
3 to 9, I think.
Or 3 to 9, Cynthia thinks. Or 10 to 2 p.m. Eastern time in the States. And Cynthia will be leading the first meditation. Yeah. So she'll be doing a guided meditation, and you can also, of course, stay for the rest. So I will send you details about that tomorrow.
And also, just so everybody knows, it's a 6-hour meditation. but they ask you to stay for one session. But if you want to stay for 2 sessions, you can stay for the whole day. You can go in and you can go out, but only during the session. So if you want to just join for 1 hour, you could.
Okay. And then the next time Cynthia's leading a retreat is the New Year retreat in Portugal from the 27th of December to the 3rd of January. And I really recommend it. I did this last year and it was amazing, really. A few people on the screen actually did it last year.
And some on the screen are doing it this year.
Oh, yeah, right. So yeah, that's, I'll send you details and links tomorrow, but that was, pure bliss and a really good way to deepen or start a meditation practice. And then just the last thing is our next webinar. It won't be on the Tuesday. It will be, won't be on the Wednesday. It will be on the Tuesday. It's November the 5th. And I'll send you all the details and the registration links also in this email that I'm going to send to you with the recordings. So it'll be a full email in the next couple of days. Yes. And Cynthia runs these by donation. So I will send you details of how to donate should you wish to do so.
All right.
Okay.
Very good to see everyone. So this is the fun part also at the end of the webinars, that everybody opens up their microphones and we can just all say goodbye to each other and hello.
Bye.
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 Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Nasri.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.